You know that exact feeling, right? You just finished this grueling, like, hour-long meeting, maybe 30 minutes ago.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
You finally close your laptop, you sit back in your chair, and just take a deep breath. The room is quiet. And then what happens next?
For the vast majority of professionals, absolutely nothing.
Right. You just move on to the next fire drill.
And that quiet pivot to the next task, that is exactly where the danger lies.
Mm.
Because in that silence, everything you and your team just worked for over the last hour immediately starts to unravel.
That is, it's really the perfect way to put it. And the research we're diving into today argues that this 30-minute window, this post-meeting silence, isn't just downtime.
No, not at all.
It's actually the most critical lever you have to shape your team's direction. We're looking at a really fascinating stack of sources today.
Yeah, some great stuff in here.
We've got executive communication frameworks, plus some really eye-opening behavioral psychology data on, like, memory decay. So the mission for this deep dive is to basically transform that empty post-meeting void into a high-leverage professional tool.
Which is so needed.
We are going to master the follow-up email.
And it is such an incredibly powerful yet underutilized mechanism,
Yeah.
We leave these meetings with what psychologists call an illusion of alignment.
An illusion of alignment. I love that term.
Right, because everyone in the room was nodding, everyone seemed to agree. So we just kind of assume the work is going to happen organically.
Yeah, you assume everyone's on the same page.
But without a written follow-up, that alignment just shatters almost instantly.
It's like watching this fantastic, really complex movie that abruptly cuts to black right before the third act.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. The lights come up, everyone walks out of the theater into the parking lot, and you realize every single person has a totally different interpretation of how the story was actually supposed to end.
Exactly. You thought marketing was handling the Q3 budget. Marketing thought sales was handling it.
And then 2 weeks go by.
2 weeks go by and the project is just dead in the water. That's why we have to fundamentally shift our mindset before we even look at how to write these emails.
We have to stop viewing the follow-up as this tedious administrative chore, right?
Yes. It's not just the corporate equivalent of eating your vegetables.
Yeah.
We need to start recognizing it as a strategic leadership signal.
Right, because a well-crafted follow-up establishes reality. It cuts through all the fog of the conversation and creates a definitive written record of what was actually decided.
And doing that triggers something our sources call the accountability effect.
Okay, let's break that down. What is the accountability effect?
Well, when you document a meeting effectively, you are moving away from vague collective responsibility. You're establishing true accountability.
Meaning someone's actually on the hook for it.
Exactly. The responsibility for completing a specific task is undeniably attached to a single person. You aren't just summarizing the past hour, you are actively assigning accountability for the future.
You're putting a name and a deadline on the board.
You are.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second here, because I know exactly what some of you listening are thinking.
Go for it.
If I am constantly the one volunteering to take the notes, typing them up beautifully, sending out the recaps to the whole team, doesn't that inherently lower my status in the room?
That is a very common fear.
Right. Aren't I just doing everyone else's homework and making myself look like the team's administrative assistant instead of a strategic leader?
It's a totally valid concern. But the executive frameworks we're looking at reframe this entirely. Taking the initiative to synthesize and distribute the information is actually a highly proactive leadership behavior.
Because you're taking charge of the information.
Exactly. The person who holds the pen controls the narrative. When you are the one who actively dictates what was decided, you're subtly putting yourself in the driver's seat of the project's momentum.
Wow, yeah. The person holding the pen controls the narrative. I love that.
You demonstrate ultimate reliability, and you make it clear that you are managing the timeline, not just floating along with it.
You aren't the assistant, you're the driver.
Precisely.
So, okay, if we embrace this mindset that this is a tool for driving momentum, how do we actually build the vehicle? Let's move from the psychology into the structural mechanics of the perfect follow-up.
The sources outline a core anatomy that applies to almost any professional follow-up. It really relies on a 5-part skeleton.
Okay, what are the 5 parts?
You need a highly specific subject line, a warm opening, a bulleted decision section, a ruthless action items section, and a concise closing.
Let's start right at the inbox level, because this is where the battle for attention is won or lost, right? The subject line.
Oh, absolutely.
I always think of a vague subject line, like if I just write, checking in, or follow-up, it's like a package shipped without a tracking number.
That is exactly what it is.
It might arrive, but it's probably going to get lost in the warehouse. A proper subject line is the tracking number. It guarantees the recipient knows exactly what's inside before they even click it.
People triage their inboxes constantly. If they can't immediately identify the urgency and the context of your email, they just skip it.
So what's the formula the sources recommend?
The framework suggests a very rigid formula to bypass that triage friction. It's recap plus action items followed by the specific meeting name followed by the date.
Using the actual word recap right in the subject line is so smart too.
It really is.
Because sending a quick recap instantly anchors everyone in the shared reality of what just happened. But it doesn't sound like you're aggressively giving them new orders out of nowhere.
Right, you're just summarizing established facts. It totally lowers their defensive filters.
Okay, so you have that specific subject line. Then what?
Then you have a very brief, warm opening just thanking them for their time. But the real engine of the email is in the next two sections.
The decisions and the action item.
Exactly. First, the decisions section. This is just a clean, bulleted list of the broad strokes that were agreed upon. And then you hit the critical piece, the action items section.
And the sources are incredibly strict about the formula for an action item.
Very strict.
It has to be action plus owner plus deadline. There is no wiggle room there whatsoever.
None at all. And there's a deep psychological reason for that rigidity. An action without a named owner and a specific date isn't a plan. It's just a wish floating in an inbox.
A wish floating in an inbox, that's so true.
If you just write, we need to finalize the marketing budget, you trigger the bystander effect.
Oh, right. Everyone reads it. Everyone agrees it's important.
And absolutely nobody does it because everybody assumes someone else will pick it up.
It's almost like giving the task an expiration date. Without a name and a time, the task is perishable. It just rots in the inbox.
It really does. But if you write, finalize the marketing budget, Sarah, by Thursday at 5 p.m., it instantly becomes real.
It becomes undeniable.
Yes, and that's the universal skeleton. Subject, opening, decisions, action items, closing.
But our sources make an important distinction here, right? Because while that structural skeleton is universal, the clothing you put on it has to change depending on your audience.
Absolutely. Dropping a highly rigid, bulleted list on a brand new client might feel a bit aggressive.
Yeah, they might be like, whoa, okay.
Right, whereas dropping it on your internal design team might be exactly what they want. So the sources break this down into 4 specific contexts or flavors of follow-up.
Let's look at the first flavor, the internal team recap. This is when you're communicating with people you work with every day.
So the trust is already there.
Right. So what's the optimal approach for them?
Speed and efficiency. Internal teams prioritize velocity over diplomacy. You really don't need to waste their time with paragraphs of warm small talk.
Just get straight to the point.
Keep it heavy on the bullet points, document the decisions, assign the action items, and get out of their way so the team can keep moving.
That makes total sense. Now, contrast that with flavor number 2, the client recap. So, dealing with an external meeting.
This requires a very different approach. The tone here has to shift significantly.
Yeah.
Because you aren't just driving a project, you are actively managing a relationship.
Especially when you're dealing with external stakeholders, right? People who might have thousands or even millions of dollars riding on the project's success.
Exactly. And that's a great vocabulary word there, stakeholder. Anyone with a significant interest in the project. Their deep interest means your tone has to be flawless.
So how do we adjust the tone?
You need a warmer, more polished approach. You want to reassure them that you are aligned without making them feel like they're being micromanaged.
So you want to project extreme competence, but with a velvet glove.
Precisely. Which brings us to the third flavor, and arguably the one that causes the most anxiety, the job interview follow-up.
Oh, man. People agonize over these.
I really do.
Should I send it? Will I sound desperate? What do I even say?
Well, the structural blueprint here is usually a bit longer, typically about 3 to 4 short paragraphs. You want to emphasize your appreciation for their time and reiterate your confidence in your ability to do the job.
But there is a massive trap here if you just use a generic template.
Right. The golden rule of the interview follow-up, and this applies to the fourth flavor, networking follow-ups as well, is that you absolutely must reference something highly specific from the conversation.
This is where I think a lot of people struggle, myself included.
And feel tricky.
You know you need to include a personal detail, but how do you inject that specific detail into an email without sounding completely unnatural? You don't want to sound like a robot that was programmed to simulate human empathy, like, hello, human, I also enjoy golf.
It's a very real risk. And the behavioral psychology behind this is fascinating. You actually cannot fake this after the fact.
What do you mean?
The secret to writing a natural-sounding specific detail is that it relies entirely on active listening during the meeting.
Oh, so you have to be paying attention in the moment.
Yes. If you were truly engaged when they mentioned, say, their struggle with the new software rollout or their recent vacation to Austin, weaving it in is effortless.
You just use it as the bridge. Like, it was great hearing your insights on the challenges with the new software rollout.
Exactly. When you reference a specific nuanced detail like that, it proves to the other person that you valued their time and treated them as an individual.
It instantly separates you from the dozens of other people who just blasted out a copy-pasted, thanks for your time, I look forward to hearing from you tomorrow.
100%. So we have our universal skeleton and we have our four contextual flavors: internal, client, interview, and networking.
But, as always, human psychology finds a way to throw a wrench in the gears. Even with the best intentions, things go wrong.
They do. And our sources identify several major pitfalls that can completely neutralize the effectiveness of your follow-up.
Okay, let's go through these 5 common mistakes. We've touched on a few already, like the vague subject line that gets lost in triage.
Right, mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 is missing the strict action item formula, so tasks just float away.
Mistake number 3 is missing that specific detail in networking or interviews, which makes you look like a spam bot.
Exactly. But there's a fourth trap that I think is incredibly common in corporate environments.
The wall of text.
Yes. Writing emails that are just way too long. This is a huge issue, and it comes back to cognitive load.
Right. The sources offer a brilliant, brutal rule of thumb for this. If the recipient has to scroll on their phone to read your entire email, they simply won't read it carefully.
It is so true. When you open an email on your phone and see 3 solid blocks of text, your brain just instantly decides, I'll deal with this later.
And later usually means never.
The cognitive friction is just too high. You have to edit yourself ruthlessly. Bullet points are your best friend here.
Okay, so that brings us to the 5th and final mistake, and perhaps the most fatal one of all, sending the follow-up too late.
The timing issue.
Okay, I have a confession to make. I am completely guilty of this.
We all are, occasionally.
You have a crazy busy Tuesday, right? Back-to-back meetings from 9 to 5. And you tell yourself, I'll type up all the notes and send the recaps first thing on Wednesday.
But then Wednesday happens.
Exactly. Wednesday brings a massive unexpected fire drill, and suddenly it's Friday afternoon. But let me push back on this, though. If it's been 3 days, isn't a late email still better than no email at all? Like, just from a purely administrative standpoint?
Logically, you would think so. But psychologically, our sources say the answer is no. A late email is often worse than no email.
Really? Wait, how is having no record better?
Because of the rapid decay of what researchers call meeting memory. You have to think about the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, but applied to a chaotic corporate environment.
Okay, explain that a bit.
Same-day follow-up is ideal. Next day is acceptable. But 3 days later, by day 3, everyone's memory of that event has fundamentally warped.
Because they've sat through like 12 other meetings since then.
Exactly. They've had dozens of conversations. Their context has shifted. If you send a highly detailed list of decisions and action items on Friday for a Tuesday morning meeting, you aren't creating clarity. You're actively introducing confusion.
Because they read it and think, wait, did we really agree to that? I thought we decided something else.
Yes. You end up sparking a debate about what was said, rather than executing on what was decided. Timeliness is just as critical as the accuracy of the text itself. The half-life of a meeting is basically 24 hours.
Wow. The half-life of a meeting is 24 hours. That is a terrifying but essential metric to keep in mind.
It really puts the urgency into perspective.
So to really cement how all these psychological rules and structural formulas come together, I want to look at a flawless, real-world example provided in our sources.
Because contrast is the best teacher.
Exactly. Let's look at what most people do versus what they should do. Let's set the stage here. Imagine we just had a 45-minute strategy call with a major client.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Here is the bad version of the follow-up. And I'll be honest, this is the kind of email I definitely used to send before I understood the mechanics we're talking about today. Are you ready?
Let's hear it.
Hey, Sarah, great meeting today. Really glad we could connect and hash things out. Let's get that launch going. Talk soon.
Oh, wow. It physically hurts to hear that.
Right. I mean, it's friendly, but it is entirely useless. What meeting? What launch? Who's responsible for what?
It creates zero accountability.
Exactly. Now let's dissect the perfect specimen from the sources. This is an email sent for that exact same client meeting. Why don't you read the good version?
Sure, so notice how it utilizes the entire universal skeleton, but dresses it in the polished tone required for a client. The subject line is, Recap plus Next Steps, Morgan and Davis strategy called June 19.
Okay, right away, it survives the inbox triage. Perfect tracking number.
Yep, then the opening. Hi, Sarah. Thanks again for making time today. It was a genuinely helpful session.
Warm but brief. I like it.
Then we move straight into the decision section. Here's a quick recap of what we covered. Bullet 1, market positioning. Agreed to focus on the mid-market segment for Q3 launch. Bullet 2, timeline. Targeting soft launch July 15th, full launch August 4. Bullet 3, open question. Pricing strategy to be finalized by June 28.
It's incredibly clean. You can digest that in about 4 seconds. Zero scrolling required on a phone.
Then the crucial action items section, using that ruthless formula. Next steps. Morgan will send revised positioning brief by June 22. Sarah to confirm budget allocation by June 25. Joint review call, June 28 at 10 a.m.
I want to pause on that last bullet point. Setting that joint review call for June 28th is brilliant because it establishes a cadence.
A cadence, yes. Another great vocabulary word. It sets a reliable rhythm for future check-ins.
You aren't just following up on the past. You are literally setting the heartbeat for the future of the project so it doesn't stall out.
It creates undeniable momentum. And finally, the closing. Please let me know if anything looks different from your notes. Looking forward to the next conversation.
That closing is actually my favorite part. Let me know if anything looks different from your notes. It leaves room for correction, which feels highly collaborative rather than dictatorial.
You're controlling the narrative, but you're doing it with an open hand.
It's a masterful piece of communication. I mean, it probably takes 5, maybe 7 minutes to write, but it saves literally hours of confusion, missed deadlines, and damaged relationships down the line.
It is the ultimate high-leverage activity.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what does this actually mean for you, the listener, heading into your work week? If we connect all these structural rules and psychological insights to the bigger picture, it fundamentally changes how you should view your role in any room you walk into.
It really does. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We talked about how taking the initiative to write the recap is a strong leadership signal. But if you take it a step further, the person who writes the follow-up email ultimately becomes the de facto historian of that meeting.
Oh, that's interesting.
By taking on what seems like a simple administrative task, do you actually gain the subtle power to shape the company's long-term direction? Because when memories fade, and we know they fade in 24 hours, your written document becomes the official narrative of what happened.
That is an incredibly potent realization. Whoever writes the history controls the future, even if that history is just a 5-minute email about Q3 marketing budgets.
Exactly.
It brings us right back to that movie theater analogy from the beginning. You do not want your team wandering out into the parking lot, all believing the story ended differently.
No, you want to be the one who sits down and writes the definitive third act for them.
So here is our challenge to you for this week. Think about your own recent habits. What chaotic meeting situation in the past month made you wish you'd sent a structured follow-up email? Or, on the flip side, what disaster did you avoid because you were incredibly glad that you did?
It's a great question to ask yourself.
Take this structural formula, the skeleton, the action item rules, the 24-hour timeline, and try applying it to the very next meeting you attend today. If you're new here, subscribe so you don't miss next week's deep dive. Until then, keep leading the conversation, even long after the meeting ends.